call this Board of Education meeting to order. First on the agenda is the consideration of bid for athletic facilities projects at Daniel Boone and David Crockett. And we have Paul McCall and Miss Ginger here from the Lewis Crew. Y'all want to come on up? I'm sure we got some questions.
Sure. Where shall we?
Maybe at the podium over there.
Yeah, that probably makes sense, doesn't
I
it?
think it's the easiest for you all.
Okay.
How y'all want to do this? Just start with questions, or I mean, I guess, you know, we could just go through the bid tab. You know, we had the, maybe just to recap, we had the 3 bids, which is what we expected. And, you know, I guess for me, I'll just say, you know, Mr. Irvin was there, and Mr. Boyd, and Ginger and I, and, you know, a little disappointed at first because they were a little higher than kind of what we were hoping, but I guess Mr. Boyd made me feel a little better. He thought they might come in a little higher than what they did. So they're not exorbitantly high, you know, and I think at least with 3 bids, we had some competition that, you know, felt that. So I think with that, you know, we can discuss subs. I mean, a lot of the subs were the same that you can see over here on the far right of the bid tab. You know, everybody had all of their information and, you know, license number information and everything like that. So, so the low bid, I think everybody knows now and has talked about, was Burwell, and they were not only the low bid monetarily, but you could see on the contract days they were quite a bit less on the contract days at $260. So obviously we all know that time is of the essence on this project, right? So that was important. And that's the other thing I was saying a minute ago to Mr. Boyd. I could shed a little more light on that. So I was going to hold off, but I did call Todd Morris, who kind of led that effort for Burwell. I called him yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. And just to try to glean a little more information. One thing from our perspective, and you all know this, we worked a lot with Southern Bleacher for the pre-manufactured. There was always bleachers, the grandstands, and that's a huge part of this project. And I was really, you know, you can't do public taxpayer dollars, you know, we can't do a proprietary product like that, especially one that's, you know, represents a million plus dollars, you know, and a big part of the, you know, a third to somewhere between a quarter and a third probably of this project. So we had to put, you know, additional manufacturers, you know, that were reputable. But, you know, there's all these little nuanced kind of things that, you know, how the rest of the project would fit with that, right? So we had all those block ancillary buildings that were being built underneath it, and, you know, we had all that worked out with that spacing. So for our perspective, just in terms of time, you know, every bleacher manufacturer would be a little bit different. So making sure that they would fit kind of what, you know, we had already fit to Southern Bleachers specs and their spacing of columns and everything like that. You know, it was all pretty well, it's fairly complex, you know, to knit it all together. So the main takeaway from all that is I'm happy to say that, you know, Todd Morris told me with Burwell, told me that the bids they got 2 or 3 bids, I guess, from grandstand bleacher manufacturers, and he said Southern Bleacher was not, he said they were really close, and Southern Bleacher actually was not the lowest, but they were the only one that told them that they could meet this timeline. So that was a big thing that I think. So, you know, and I think there's just the added kind of, you know, I want to emphasize, you know, I think they and we, you know, if this moves forward, you know, it needs to move expeditiously, and you know, we all know time is of the essence, you know, could there be enough bad weather and, you know, everything that it doesn't happen by, you know, kind of mid-July like we're trying to get these turned over? Yeah, that's, you know, with construction and outdoors, that's always a possibility. But, you know, I think what we've got is a good bid and a bid that meets the contract time. And that's obviously a big part of what we're all trying to do here. So, but I was glad to hear, you know, I think even some time that it would take us to maybe fit the buildings and the rest of the project back around a different manufacturer. I think, you know, knowing that we don't have to deal with that is an advantage, right, at this point. So anyway, other questions? I think that's kind of the big thing I wanted to say, I think, in terms of you know, that's very favorable.
Mr. Flames?
I had a question, really not for Paul or you all, but really for Brad. I mean, the way this is prepared right here on this financial impact, and I don't know if, is he gonna hit on that, or is this part, he's gonna hit on that?
We're gonna go over that once if we move forward with this, then we'll go over the next part is the financials. But if we don't pick a contractor tonight, financials don't matter. Does that make sense? I mean.
Yeah, I just wanted, I mean, I wouldn't care to go ahead with the Burwell, and because of the days and the cheaper bid, but I also wanted to tie back in and make sure with Brad that, you know.
Well, how about we do that during discussion?
That'd be fine.
That'll work?
Can I make a motion then on it, or you wanna wait?
I'm sorry.
No, no.
I know there was at least one question, and Paul and Ginger may be able to address it, maybe not the exact percentage of, you know, contingency, but
Yeah.
there was a question about contingency dollars. It was built into the specifications that the contractors bid on. So there are contingency funds built into that overall bid, to that base bid.
10%, or how much contingency is on there?
It was not, it was 5%. I just
5%.
confirmed it, and if you want to, so what Ginger brought on that, it's spec section 012100 allowances, and then there's a
Chad, my
schedule.
thought was, I brought that up because
Either one.
the other two was like $1,000 difference.
Yes, sir.
And Burwell was like $400,000 difference.
Yes, sir.
And my thought was, did he put a 5% contingency in there? Because if he didn't, there was a $400,000.
Yeah,
But
but they all
if they
did.
did, according, yeah, Paul said they did have a
Yeah.
contingency in there.
Okay.
Well, they're on the hook for it anyway, because it's in there pretty clearly. And I'll just read, let me just read. So we had 3 allowances in here in the schedule of allowances, and maybe Ginger can bring it up so you guys can read it right along with me. And you know, that's a great question, because sometimes in the heat of getting a project done, there's a lot of things to coordinate. Some of these things can get glossed over. And when Mr. Boyd asked me, I'm like, yeah, I know we got that in there. So I'm glad we did. So just go on down to under part 3 for execution, the schedule of allowances starting with 3.1. If you just scroll.
3.1.
Yeah, just scroll on down.
So in this
Oh, no.
allowance section.
Yeah, right there.
Yes,
You
yeah,
just
yeah,
have
in
to
the same
go back,
section.
go back. Yeah, there it is. So if you scroll up a little bit, it'll be, you have allowance 3, allowance 2, and allowance 1.
Okay, there we go,
So,
sorry.
yeah, so that's the big one. So the allowance number 1 was a project contingency, right? I mean, so there's enough, you know, it's a renovation of sorts. There's demolition, there's gonna be stuff underground there that nobody knows, you know, that's been abandoned probably in place. Of course, we have language in our demolition spec that anything that's within the building footprint, it's getting, you know, cut out. We don't want anything abandoned. We want it clean, you know, engineered fill and everything like that. So, project contingency in the amount of 5%. Mr. Boyd, I told you I couldn't remember if it's 5% or 10%. And 5% would really be more appropriate, I think, for this type of project. But 5%, and then if you read down, listed as a single line item in the general contractor schedule values, and any unused portion of allowance number 1 shall be credited back to the owner upon substantial completion. So it's there. Stuff comes up. It's construction. It's messy. But, you know, that language is in there so that if they don't use it, you know, Washington County Schools gets it back. And the same thing I did, so allowance number 2 is something I do a lot, just, and it's not huge. I mean, at $10,000, now that's $10,000 for, this is the one for Boone, the one for Crockett looks exactly like this. It's the same thing. So that 5%, you know, that's 5% for Boone, and then the 5% for Crockett. And then this would be $10,000 at each school for miscellaneous steel, because your steel fabricators, it drives me nuts, but, you know, they're responsible for the whole documents, but there's some things in miscellaneous steel, sorry, I'm getting into the weeds of sort of the trades, but, you know, that will not show up on structural drawings because it's not quote-unquote structural, but it's on architectural drawings. And just, that's just an easy way to, you know, with a small amount of money, I could imagine on these projects, probably none of that being used, but I put the same language in there. If you scroll on down, it says the same thing, that it's to be included as a single item. So when we get that schedule of values from the contractor, that'll stack up and you see clearly what that is, and it says any used portion of allowance number 2 shall be credited back to the owner upon substantial completion. So I could very well see, you know, not having to use, you know, a lot of times that miscellaneous steel, like with a brick veneer, you know, they're missing certain things between the structural block and the brick veneer and things like that. I don't really think we have that in there, but it's an item I like to get in there just in case. And
So
then,
will you let us know if you use
yeah,
any of that
So
on both of them?
yes, and the way you track that is because when the contractor puts that on their schedule of value, so they just do line items per trade, you know, like their electrical will be one, mechanical, but you know, their steel fabricator will have one. But this will just be at the end of that schedule of values, and if they never make any draws, you know, or there's never any construction directive change or anything, then they'll just never draw from that amount. That's why I wanted to put in there as a single line item. It's not buried like in the rest of the steel, you know, where it would be easy to hide it, right? So here, at least it's a single line item and you can track it. So anyway, the other one is allowance number 3. So the way we'll want to do this is for construction testing. That's required, Chapter 17, special inspections. You know, it's making sure that, you know, especially if you think about all the welding and everything in a, you know, for a grandstand that's going to hold almost 2,500 people, right? So I just got a call this week from a county commissioner in Sumner County because one of their grandstands collapsed and started a ripple effect of testing some other ones, and they found that there were 3 others that were deficient. So anyway, so I had a lot of good information to share with them just because I've gone through this process with you guys, right, which has been great. But anyway, testing and inspecting, you know, that's a requirement of the International Building Code. So we had this number. This is a really solid number because we got it from ETS, Environmental Testing Systems, who they're doing work on several projects for us now, but they're an independent third-party testing agency. You know, we want the contractor to carry this number in their bid number so that, you know, they can draw from it, but they need to be contracted directly with the owner, with you guys, so that there's no funny business going on and no, you know, I always say the fox in the hen house kind of situation where if, you know, they might be more likely to pass certain things if they know who's paying them, you know, but if they're being paid and directly contracted through the owner, then, you know, it cuts out some of that potential for the funny business, right? So anyway, that's the 3 allowances that we have there. That's one that, again, that's a number that we asked them directly. They're also the company that was the low, when we got 3 bids to do the geotechnical. So they do geotechnical construction testing, you know, all that, and those type of firms do all that kind of work. And they gave us, they said it'd be around $10,000, you know, for this kind of project, which is a pretty good number, I think, you know. So, and you can see that's 10,000 per school. So even in parenthetically, I say they're 20,000, you know, maybe for the schools.
Mr. Otterson, do you have a question?
Yeah, when we talk contract days, is that what they're saying they will need to complete the project?
Yeah, when they get a notice to proceed, and those are not work days like 5 days of the week, Monday through Friday, those are calendar days. So those are calendar days.
So based upon our timelines, isn't that basically disqualifying GRC from it, 300?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it was very clear that they weren't going to make it.
Yeah.
Right. What was Preston as far as their timelines? What would 295?
Go ahead and go, that might be a good time just to segue back to the bid tab where we can all look from at that information.
Here's the date.
295.
295, yeah.
295, yeah, but where would that put them in finishing?
Late August.
Yeah.
Which
They
isn't
were-
good.
Right.
All right.
Well, again, you know, it's fortuitous that the low bid is also the one that, you know, I mean, some things make a lot of sense about that, right? I mean, the longer their contract time goes, the more they're paying general conditions and
Sure.
everything like that too. So it is in their best interest, you know, to finish on time too. So that's.
What's your,
better for them.
what's your experience in working with Burwell, or have you worked with them before in
You
any
know,
projects?
I have, they have a Knoxville office and a Tri-Cities office, and of course, this one is the Tri-Cities office, because it's up here, right? And I don't have direct experience working with them, but I mean, Burwell's very reputable. You know, I've had good experience with the Knoxville office before. You've worked with them
For
before.
the Knoxville office, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like all three that we had were pretty reputable, right? I don't know if that's a good enough answer. You know, they asked a lot of good questions, I think, during the, you know, some of the stuff that showed up in the addenda. What was that?
They built
They're
Woods
doing
Creek
Boone
and
Street.
Jonesboro.
Jonesboro.
Yeah, right. No, okay.
So ideally, 260 would, depending on when we start, hopefully, would allow to start the next season, would it? That would
That's right.
close.
That's right, and you all remember also that if you, we can go there or not, but, you know, we had liquidated damages in here if the contractor goes beyond that time. And we did $500 a day for the first month, and then after the first month, and that was, I think that was a good suggestion that Mr. Boyd made, that after a month, that they would increase to $1,000 a day. So that adds up pretty quickly. So again, in their best interest to get finished.
Right.
What's your opinion about a project manager?
Just like an owner's rep.
Well, does somebody representing us, do we need somebody, or are you gonna represent us?
We do that.
I mean, that's
Mr.
part
Hale
of
and I
it.
had that conversation just in the last few days, but you know, what we do and what's left in our fee is the construction administration services. And I would argue that, you know, I mean, obviously we review submittals, you know, and, you know, do all the typical, you know, field reports and all those kind of things, you know, for construction administration activities. There are some school systems, like if we work at Maribel or Alcoa, you know, they have a guy that they want to be an owner's rep, and I think they feel comfortable with that, another layer of oversight. But that really is our job, you know, is to make sure that, you know, for one thing, we have to make sure that they're adhering to the construction documents, to the product standards and the quality standards, right? But also just, you know, when we review pay apps and for the schedule of values, I mean, I don't think there's a lot of value add to another project manager, you know, because that's pretty much going to redundantly, I'll tell you, the guy that we work with at Alcoa, I mean, he pretty much redundantly just does what we do. We had Skanska, a big outfit, working as a project manager, construction manager, I guess technically, more of an owner's rep for Jefferson County schools. And I mean, I send pay apps and basically they just take a look and initial it. I mean, I don't know how much value, and that's not my call, because that's something they wanted to do as a system and as a board, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I just think probably don't get a lot of extra bang for the buck.
Will you all, report to us once a month? I mean,
I would just
you
keep
report
every
to the
board
director
meeting.
of schools, but,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
I think they're gonna stay in the same timeline they are now, each board meeting.
Yeah, we'll come up every board meeting and update, and, yeah. Yeah, I don't see that changing.
Mr. Holston?
Any idea as to why there's 70 days less? What do they think they can do? I mean, is this realistic, 260, when the other two of them are much higher?
It might be that they used a different bleacher contractor too. We don't know who they use. So if they use somebody that told them, oh no, we're gonna be cheaper, but we're not gonna meet that deadline, or, you know, it depends on a few things.
And sometimes with a bidder, I mean, it's kind of the chance they have to take. They might have opted to go with the manufacturer that was less expensive, you know, and thinking that that would get them the bid. But of course, Burwell's the low bid anyway.
I
so-
also know that one of the contractors, I know the three of them really wanted the project, but one of them has a lot of stuff going on. So it's manpower too, like having to schedule your staff. So I think that affected their bid a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just say, you know, that was Preston, because I think several, we've talked about that, maybe with some people in here, that they recently were awarded the dome in, Top Bend. So when I talked to one of their guys, he said, yeah, I thought for a long time they were only going to bid Crockett and not both. They ended up bidding both, but he just said, for that reason that Ginger's saying, you know, they didn't want to, and I understand that, they didn't want to spread themselves too thin, but anyway.
Mr. Flannery.
I'd like to make a motion that we select Burwell Construction Company for the base bid of $8,287,000 to proceed with phase one of David David Crockett High School athletic facilities.
We have a motion, we have a second.
I'll say,
Discussion. Okay, Jeff, you want to ask Brad about some financials, I think, my appropriate.
You want to pop that up or explain that a little? I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, but I just wondered what our fund balance was today, the way it sits right now. You know, as I know you haven't got the audit completely back just yet, but I just want to make sure that you're financially sound with that, taking that $4,087,000 out.
So for the document, so for the document you're looking at, I just put the three bids that we received, so the top one being Burwell. So what you're seeing there is the total price of $8.287. So we have $3.4 million of county education capital funds that is going through the process of approval right now, which means our part of that, or your part as the board's 4.887 plus an additional $227,220 that will still owe the Lewis Group by the time this is done. Now, what I did in the budget is we had some budget dollars last year that we had already paid the Lewis Group, so I didn't know what we would end up paying them this year, so I rolled that forward. So I already have $150,000 of that 227 budgeted already. So that's just an additional impact of $77,220 as far as the budget goes. So that's where you come to as far as budget dollars go, $4,964,220. Now, you're asking about where our fund balance is now and what did we budget? You know, we budgeted about 9 point, let me pull the budget document. Is actually, we have that.
Can I ask a question before you go further?
Yes.
Of that 3.4 up there that's from the county, capital projects, last year we paid for the lights and the turf, right? Is that the expense that we have? And they was, am I wrong, that they was about $5 million of that money? So how much of last year, how much of that money was left?
Well, so we would need to look at the education capital projects fund. I want to say about 5 or 6 million that carry forward.
Yeah.
In addition to what we have this year. Now, all of that's earmarked. You know, there's 3.5 million earmarked for school safety, totally separate from this.
Okay.
You know, so it's separate from that 3.4.
Yeah.
You'll have buses in there, you'll have, but
My question is, when we took ESSER 3 money and freed up and used it to pay for the lights and, or the HVAC controls and stuff, right? And that freed up the $5.5 million. So that's when we used that money to take care of the fields, the turf, and the stadium lights, right? Is that not what we done? So whatever that figure should be what's left.
I mean, if we're talking about the whole education capital fund, we'd have to pull that document up here and show you.
Well, I mean,
What's.
that's my question is, we carried some money over. And what we carried over should be there this year.
It is,
$3.4 million.
for this project, it's 3.4. There is other dollars, but it's, again, it's earmarked for. other
You're marked
things.
3.5 million for security measures.
Right.
So right there is $6.9 million that we carried over from previous.
Well, I thought we was,
Remember too, this is the first year that we have to pay for Jonesboro, so there's
And we're losing
Yeah,
a little over $3 million.
3 million, and then Johnson City's, I
This
think
year.
it's 2.5, and Johnson City gets 500,000. So there's-
Access to.
Yeah, so that's 3 million of that money that's also we don't have access to starting this year. So that 3 million plus the 3.4 plus the 3.5, you know, you're at $10 million right there. That's the big things. There's some other little things and smaller things in there. School buses, you know, there's IT money that's in there. So that's, you put all that together, the buses and the IT, you're over 11 million now for this year. And that's the big things, that's what's ate it up. So with the purchase of the house, that was in addition to the original budget. So the budgeted fund balance pool is around 9.5 million before you do this. So when you add this, our budgeted pool from fund balance is going to go to 14.5 million for this year. That's assuming all revenues and expenses come in as budgeted. The fund balance, and Chad, you're correct that the auditors have not gave me the final audited fund balance numbers. My estimate at this time is it's going to come in somewhere between that, likely in the mid to upper 22 million range, which means we was at 22.5 last year. So I believe if we haven't held, we were real close to holding what we was last year. Maybe when it's all said and done, we come in a little above 23, but it should be somewhere real close to that. So if we use 14.5, you know, that'll put us somewhere down in that 8 million range, you know, as we go into end FY24. Obviously, we hope expenses come in better. We will not be getting the full sales tax like we have. That will hurt us. And I mean, that's going to hurt us at least $2 million. We did start going negative compared to last year on the last month, so in August. So, you know, so we're not going to be in the same situation at the end of this year revenue-wise as we have been. And so I guess I don't need to get into all that now in this meeting, but to answer your question, you know, the budgeted fund balance we think is going to be around 8 million at the end of this year if you do this project. Obviously, it'll make for a different budget discussion next year when we do next year's budget.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, we have to have our teachers up another 1.8 million next budget season.
That was the estimate to keep up with the state in 3 years. So my mental note is when we estimated that last year, it's going to be about 1.8 million for each of the next 3 years, totaling 5.4 million over the next 3 years that we've got to do with the state. That will be in addition.
This project's been put off for like 8 years. I
Oh,
don't
it's a
think at this
50-year
point,
project.
yeah, I don't think at this point we can put this project off any longer.
No, I don't even, I want us to be sound as far as where we're going out. But I mean, this is a once in a 50-year, I mean, it's, both of them have been there 50 years. I mean, it's time to do something.
But keep in mind, our mindset at our board meetings, when we spend money, it's gotta be a little different.
Yeah, you've
That's
got
what
the
made
money,
biggest change.
you've got, in my opinion, you've got the money to do this project right now. But you gotta have a different mindset going forward. You know?
Well, is the county gonna go along with us getting $3.5 million out of capital projects?
Well, with a budget amendment tonight and your approval, it's going on the commission agenda. Maybe I'm speaking, you
No,
should speak, I'm
they,
sorry.
you know, the U did not meet, their normal process is that would have went to the U. They did not meet, but they allowed us to go in front of the budget committee without going to U. And Commissioner Wheeler, I believe, made the motion to, recommend approval, pending approval of the bids and the board's actions. And so they will consider, the $3.4 million, and plus they'll need to consider a budget amendment if you pass it at the next commission.
So should you accept this, there's a budget amendment to go along with it afterwards.
Any more questions or discussion? Darren, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Huddleston?
Aye.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Ms. Buchanan?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
All approved.
Thank you. Now, since that's been approved, we gotta go back, and like Mr. Hale said, we gotta consider the budget amendment for FY '24, general purpose school budget for the expenditures that we just approved. Any recommendation?
I'd like to make that a motion.
We have a motion, we have a second. Discussion. Hearing none, let's do a roll call vote again, please, Jennifer.
Mr. Huddleston?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Ms. Buchanan?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
All approved.
Thank you. Paul and Junior, thank you all for your work on this. Great.
We've enjoyed it.
Yes.
Guys.
Is there any way we could maybe get them started 1st of November rather than December? Just guessing, I mean, just, because that 30 days mean a lot.
It does mean a lot. I think you all remember me saying this time of year, that means a whole lot, right? So let me just say real quickly, and I had this conversation again with Todd Morris at Burwell yesterday, but, the critical path item is the bleacher, right? Because the demo is probably 3 weeks worth of work, maybe as much as a month. And that, they just need to be mobilizing, getting all their subcontracts, but the biggest thing is getting Southern Bleacher, mobilized, get in the queue with them because they're manufacturing, those pieces, right, in that grandstand. So, I could speak, very informally to him, just, is that something you want me to do?
Well, I was gonna ask the board on an associated action, if you would consider authorizing me and the chair to work with Scott Bennett to negotiate a contract with Burwell. That's another step we have to take. I don't know if negotiate's the right word, but we need to finalize the contract with Burwell.
I'll make a motion that we let the executive committee begin their agreement or finalize a contract agreement with Burwell. Second. As needed.
We have a motion and second, any discussion?
Maybe I need to judge the word that
All right, hearing none, let's do a roll call vote.
Mr. Huddleston?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Urban? Ms. Buchanan?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
All approved.
Thank you. I would anticipate the commission, as they consider the funding and budget amendment, they'll also want to know that there's at least a contract, the beginning of the contract in place. We would not execute that contract, of course, for the record, until after the commission.
Okay,
Thank you all.
thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
One item I had been requested to put back on the agenda. At our next called meeting was our van purchases. I think some of us got confused on how we voted the other night, so I did want to put it back on the agenda. FYI, we got 2 or 3 of the passenger vans in, and we rode in today to do school visit. I like them. I mean, they're a little small. I think they're very adequate for what we need. But I just think technology needs to go ahead. We need to go ahead and do something with our other purchases. What's available right now. But any recommendations on additional van purchases?
How much money is this gonna come out for their?
It's already been budgeted. I think if we do purchase the 2, is that right? Purchase the 4, that still leaves us the 139,000.
It's about 109 out of the
109.
out of the general
Oh,
fund.
that's already been in the budget.
Ms. Delger, I put it up on the screen. So
Well,
you
I
see
saw the-
in yellow,
Highlighted, yeah.
that would be what would remain if these purchases were approved, of what was budgeted in that line.
Well, I thought we voted not to purchase no
We did.
more of them till we found out if these is gonna hold up.
That was the vote, but some of us got confused on the amendments, including myself. I don't even know how I voted, to be honest with you.
You voted against it. You did, I mean, you voted with it. You did not wanna buy them till we see how they hold up.
But
I mean,
you know,
I thought we voted on not,
we voted to buy the 3 and it was a grand, right?
right?
The passenger only.
For passenger only.
So, we'll see how they hold up, and then if later on, we can purchase some more if they're hold up.
but I thought these weren't available and we voted for
Mercedes.
Mercedes.
Right,
That
that's
was
where
the-
the confusion, I think, coming from.
Well, are these gonna be, taking people or taking equipment?
They're gonna be cargo.
These are cargo vans.
I just don't think they're big enough.
No, not the ones not the ones we rode in today.
Okay.
The ones that they're asking for is like the ones that we use as the board, the high top,
And they are what, brand?
Mercedes.
Mr. Boyd,
We
did you
haven't
get
seen them though,
the,
have we?
did you get the quote that I got?
I looked online, yeah, I looked at those 2 vehicles that you showed.
Well, I mean, it was used. I know there was
Right.
20,000-30,000 miles on them, so.
They were about 45,000, and Blue Book value was right at the,
What it
I guess
was.
the bid point or something.
I know.
Yeah,
Now I am.
I still feel like we need
That's the
to.
reason why I brought it back up now.
Hold on.
This says Chevrolet.
That's what it's replacing.
That's what it's replacing.
That's what it's replacing.
Because Jared, I think those are the only ones that we could find right now is Mercedes,
And that is the price.
57,
57.
641, 75.
So we're only looking at the van cargo.
Mhm.
We're not looking at the pickups. Only talking about the van.
Only 4 high top vans.
Yeah, what you're looking at there, Ms. Buchanan, that's all the vehicle requests we had for the transportation. We've already got our purchase orders written for the pickup trucks, so we're in the queue to get them, but we're not guaranteed to get those. Then we used grant funds because we need 7 vans, 3 passenger, 4 cargo. We used grant monies to buy the 3 Mercedes, and they're already in, all 3 of them. And then we also need 4 cargo vans, 2 for technology, 2 for maintenance. And those are sitting on the lot at the Mercedes.
Because they've been approved, because they were approved on this date over here.
They was not.
Those were not, the 4 cargo vans were not approved.
But the Chevrolets and the Gator was.
The trucks and the Gator, yes, not the vans.
So we're only looking at these.
The 4 vans are the
4.
ones that are in question.
The cargo high top van.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Flannery.
I'd like to make a motion that we purchase the 4 cargo cargo vehicles for 57,641.75.
We have a motion, we have a second. discussion?
What are we using now? That we,
This is gonna be replacing 4.
Ford, it's, there's, I don't have the list right from me, there's probably a mix of Ford and Chevrolets that we're getting off the road. High mileage, long years.
are they still running?
We can keep things together to the point.
They spend more time in the shop than out on the road.
I mean, I don't want to say that. I don't want to say it's 50-50, but we don't ask for them just to ask for them. I mean, if we're asking for them, it's because the ones we're getting rid of need to be replaced.
Any update on the Chevrolets or Fords?
I mean, it's totally up in the air. They haven't let us know that we've even been approved to get them. We're just, again, we're in line. Once they're built, then they'll start giving them to whoever's, provided a purchaser. So we're just in line. Not guaranteed to get them at all. And again, the Mercedes, I know for sure 2 of them are on the lot, and he said he had the other 2 in less than 2 weeks.
What is the make of the one that we had to replace the old van that we ride in?
That was Ford.
Ford? Is it, what about
That's-
cost-wise? It's,
I mean, it was listed here, it would be, we don't have the price for that particular van because that's a 15-passenger van. We don't have anything other uses for it. You can't
nothing that
transport
big.
children.
Yeah.
School transportation can't use 15-passenger vans to transport students at school activities. Federal law.
As the van we rode in this morning was for students.
Right.
And the van we're picking up now is for the work vans.
I'd like to see them before we.
I just can't, I mean, it's like buying the first propane buses. Look how that turned out. So, I can't support purchasing, I mean, if they was so good, why ain't everybody got them? Okay? Now that van, in my opinion, I'm one person. I looked at it last night. I prefer kids not to ride that van, because it's small, it's little. But that's me, okay? I think bigger is safer.
Well, federal law, they can't ride it
I have a big, eight passenger.
any more than 9.
Yeah. So, but still, my quote, bigger is safer. So,
My only thought was if technology and maintenance needs them, I just hate for them not to get
Well-
them this year or next.
I have a problem, and I was gonna say this in the retreat over this, but I have a problem when I have 2 employees following each other, going to job, following each other in 2 big brand-new vans. Now, if my technology or something needs a big van, I'll put them in some kind of little van, if it was my choice, put them in some kind of little van or something, if they're gonna have to follow each other. Now, that's,
Who's following who? I mean, I don't.
well, Vince and Larry are following each other, going job to job.
Vince,
Not
what are you
that-
doing off work?
And they're both driving full-size big vans, and I have a problem with that. So, now I can put them in a pickup, put them in something else. So, whatever.
All right, any more discussion? All right, let's vote, and we're voting on purchasing 4 Mercedes-Benz vans for technology, 2 for maintenance.
And we've exhausted our look at used van harbors?
We have not. We have not, based on past experience and my understanding, we had bought used. We had issues with, it's a hit or miss in buying used vehicles. So in the last several years, we have reverted to buying new off of the state contract. And then the discussion went, we had a history of buying, I guess, Fords or Chevys or Dodges. And through the state contract, those vans are not available. There's a timeline. We were even told we might, that we would receive one in a certain period of time, and then it's been routine that then they say, sorry, it's not gonna happen. So we came across another contract, and the reason probably no one in the past had bought these Mercedes Sprinter vans is because, in the market, they were a little more expensive, but as supply and demand has happened, their price has gotten relatively close to the other Sprinter vans, but people just starting to have it of buying them, even though they were the original Sprinter vans that were made. And they were, popular in Europe, and then they filtered over to the United States. And then Ford, Dodge, Chevy copied them. So Mercedes were the original Sprinter vans.
Okay, let's vote, please, Jennifer, roll call, please.
Mr. Huddleston?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Irvin?
No.
Ms. Buchanan?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
No.
Mr. Fleener? Mr. Hammond?
No.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
I'm yes, and the ordinance.
Okay. One other thing I do want to mention, before we go into our retreat, I think the Lewis Group has asked on the security bid opening date be changed one day from the 30th to the 31st. I just want to see if anybody had any objection to that before the security opening bid date was the 30th, and they've asked to postpone it one day to the 31st. So if nobody has a problem with that, Mr. Boyd can relay the message to them.
And then they'll just issue an addendum. It was just a request by a contractor, of course. I think the reality is at least one contractor will always request one more time. But, one day, and it was still prior to the board meeting in time to provide the board with the bid sheets. So if it helps the process, I think it's reasonable to just move it from a Monday to a Tuesday. It was stated Mondays are terrible days to try to submit a bid for contractors. Tuesday was the next option.
Mr. Flair?
Make a motion that we
We don't have to. I asked
Just
you.
full awareness.
Just, yeah, unless somebody had a problem with it, we don't.
Just want to make sure the board is fully aware.
Okay, nothing else, meeting adjourned. All right, we'll go ahead and call our Washington County Board of Education retreat to order.